Hey everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of this interview with Lin-0, all around PvP. This second half is amazing in terms of we go through all of the classes and talk about every single one, how they're like to play, how they feel, and also information like how to counter one from all the experience and stuff that Lin-0's had, which has obviously been years now, which is really amazing. So really thankful to him. Remember, all the links to Lin-0's YouTube channel and Twitch channel is all down in the description below. So definitely head up his channel, go to his stream and say hi. It would be amazing if you do so, and let him know that you've watched this as well. So that would be really cool. He would love to know that. So let's get straight into it. It's fair. Okay, so yeah, the next thing I wanted to go through, and again, like, talk as much or as little on these as you want, just from like your own experience, and maybe just like little tips and things. So we're gonna go through, if you're okay to do this, we're gonna go through all of the characters and basically just like a brief summary of like what it might feel like to play that character, or from what you've seen if you haven't played them yourself. And then more importantly, I feel like maybe how to counter a character. So is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Okay, so why don't we start off with... Sorry?
Yeah, no, just saying, like, let's get a list, I guess, so just like remember all the different characters.
Yeah, I've got a list here. Do you want me to send it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So first off, we'll just start with the warriors and go through like this. So if we talk about berserkers, so again, like, what might it feel like for someone to play berserker, and what might it be like to like counter one if you come across one?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to preface this by saying that the classes that I have the most experience with, the classes that I have played, are the mages, the assassins, and the hunters. I don't have as much experience with warriors or fighters. I've played, like Soulmaster, for example. I've played quite a bit of Soulmaster, but these are the classes. Warriors and fighters are the ones that I have less experience playing as. Have more experience fighting against. So I just want to. There may be some bias here, some unconscious bias. I'm gonna try and be as neutral as possible, and I'm gonna go with what I feel from both my friends and my colleagues who do play these classes very well, have fed back to me, as well as my own experiences fighting them.
Perfect.
So I guess starting with Berserker, the Berserker playstyle. You look at Berserker, you think he's like a rushdown DPS character. I'd say that's wrong. He isn't. He's an opportunist, and that's very important it's a very important distinction to make. Berserker, surprisingly, actually works really well as a defensive character, because Berserker's strengths are he has huge damage, and a lot of his most important skills have armor. And so execution, which is the one where he stabs the sword in the ground twice, like he slams the sword and then stabs, that does 30k minimum almost. It does so much damage on one skill, and it's fully protected. So it's really once he decides to commit to that skill, the only way you're going to stop him is with a hard CC. And he has a very, very, very big stun. Berserker hitboxes are cracked. They are huge. And he has a very big earthquake stun, I think spin slash. So he jumps around, he spins in the air, and then he slams the sword down, and he hits people with a hard CC. That does a lot of damage as well, and he has lots of ways of remaining protected while kind of going in or trying to do damage. But at the same time, Berserker suffers from being a bit of a rotational class, because his skills are pretty high cooldown and they have very high mana costs. So what Berserker is usually going to try to do is going to try to engage on you with a shoulder charge to get something that you can't really react to. You kind of have to read it, and then he's going to like do spinning slashes on you, stomp you, earthquake, you can't roll, you're going to take like a gazillion damage, and you're going to feel Berserker is incredibly unfair. But if you can stop that engage, if your team, because everything that I'm saying here is from strictly a team deathmatch 3v3 perspective, right? It's from a ranked team play perspective. So if you can peel the Zerg off of your team, and your team can peel the Zerg off of you, you can really deny these burst windows that Zerg has, where his skills are off cooldown and where he has the mana to perform with them. A lot of times you see in videos Berserkers just using their basic attack, and that's it because they have nothing else. So Berserker is incredibly deadly when they go in, and their skills are very strong, but they don't come often. So if you can find a period where you think the Berserker is kind of having to back off, having to retreat, he doesn't have the skills to peel for his teammates and really force out that big damage, that's when you either want to chase Berserker or you just want to chase his team so that he just kind of has to stand on the sidelines and watches he can't do anything, because he is a melee class. If he wants to peel for his team, he kind of has to go in. Yeah. So that's what I would say is Zerk.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Great information there. So the next one is Warlord or what's it known as? Gunlancer.
Gunlancer. Yeah.
Gunlancer.
Gunlancer is a very tanky support. I think it's a very strong class. As I said, supports overall are very solid. It's a class that thrives in saving their team. So you have many ways of just speeding people, of being overall incredibly annoying, and you have many, many, many super armors. His identity, as soon as you activate it, is a shield that lets you use pretty much any skill. All you'll do is you take a movement speed penalty, but you still attack at the same speed, and you're practically, you cannot be CC'd with anything other than hard CC. It's like full super armor for everything that you do. So Warlord can feel very pesky because you're gonna try and burst somebody while the Warlord just comes out of nowhere, hook chains you, bashes you, and now you just took 50k damage from like a burst cannon. Or you're trying to zone people out, you're trying to get a good opportunity, but the moment that you go in, the Warlord's there to dash up a fire and knock you out. So Warlord's an incredibly strong defensive class. But it also suffers from the fact that it's very slow. So it does have the lowest spacebar cooldown in the game at 5 seconds. I think it's even lower when you have high agility. So you can be protected pretty much all the time, and you're not going to be a priority target. But you kind of struggle if people don't want to commit to you. If somebody doesn't want to engage in the Warlord, well, now the Warlord kind of has to slowly waddle around the stage trying to catch somebody or try to peel for their team. So while it's a very strong defensive class, it struggles when it's trying to be offensive. It has a very big burst. It does a lot of damage with its burst cannon, which is its own single skill, like a single burst skill. But once that's down, if you can interrupt that, Warlord pretty much doesn't have that much damage. And if you choose not to commit much in the Warlord and punish him when his identity gauge is down, if you can keep track of when he's using his identity and punish him when he doesn't have that super armor identity, then you can make Warlord, the actual Warlord himself, feel entirely helpless, because you're just going to be running circles around them and they're not going to feel like they can do much. So very strong support, but if you prioritize playing around his identity and baiting his skills correctly, then you can do very well.
Amazing with that. Thank you. So Destroyer, obviously we're not getting EU NA release, but obviously it might be coming at some point. We'll see what happens with that. Talk about Destroyer.
So Destroyer is really like a melee enabler as well, I would say. It's as I mentioned previously, it's a wall. If a Destroyer is walking at you, it's not a question of if you get hit. You are gonna get hit. There's no questioning it. Destroyer's hitboxes are huge, and the visuals are incredibly deceptive. Pretty much everything hits behind. Everything is twice as big as the hitbox appears to be, and Destroyer has some of the biggest amounts of super armors in the game. Just in like a standard build, you might be running half of your kit is gonna have super armor, and then you have Endure Pain, which is a skill that makes him completely immune to any sort of knockback skill. You can't, hit stun him, you can't knock him back, and that lasts 8 seconds. When he pops Endure Pain, he also takes like negative damage. So during those 8 seconds, he is immortal, and the only thing you can do to stop him is hard CC.
Okay.
But because you get hard CC resistance after you get hard CC'd once, you hard CC him once for like 2.5 seconds, which is one of the longest stun periods you can get in this game, 2.5 seconds. He still has another, kind of at least 6 seconds or so, 5-6 seconds of just walking around without you being able to do anything.
Just doing what he wants.
So Destroyer is incredibly oppressive to deal with. But he does have a little bit of that Warlord difficulty, where he is a little bit slow. He has ways of chasing down. He has many leaps and ways of rushing down people, and he has huge hitboxes, but he has to kind of predict where you're going to be going and then use these skills to chase you down. The actual startup animation of his skills is usually pretty slow and quite reactable. It's one of those things where when Destroyer has Endure Pain up, you have to play defensive. You have to just try and peel the Destroyer off, or really, if you're gonna get hit and you know you're gonna get hit, just try and get hit in a situation where the Destroyer's team can't convert off of their stuns, right? Get yourself in an isolated situation. Destroyer thrives in 2v1s. They can 2v1 people very easily. So try and draw the Destroyer away from your team. Try to be in a solo situation where you don't want to be hit. You don't want to be hit by the enemy team, rather, because he gets a stun, the whole team collapses on you, you die instantly. If it's just a Destroyer doing like one perfect swing, you're gonna take 30k damage, but you live. Or try and get some damage reduction, try and get to resist that period where he's unstoppable. But then once that Endure Pain is down, that's when he's vulnerable. So that's when you can kind of try and rush down the Destroyer. He still has lots of super armors, but if you can bait his stuns and you can outrun his Endure Pain, and then Destroyer is going to kind of just having to hold back and struggle and build up his gravity beads and try and get enough power to go in once again. And that's when it's a very push and pull matchup if you have a Destroyer, and that's how I think you outplay him.
Lovely prime info. So because I've found as a gunslinger, I've literally I just avoid them when I'm in the arena. I'm like, there's a Destroyer. I ignore that. I'll try and go around the back to like a bard or a summoner or something like that. But I just ignore them. So
that's what you have to do, because Destroyer is not going to be able to chase a gunslinger. The Destroyer is not going to be able to chase a Reaper. You are too mobile to be caught by Destroyer. You're only going to get caught if you want to get caught. And Destroyer isn't a class like Lancemaster that can just rush you down very easily. They do have to be quite predictive in their engages. Yeah. So how do you fight Destroyer? You don't, and that's how you win. And that works out actually. And
farm the squishier ones that are behind the Destroyer. Perfect. Okay, so Paladin, aka Holy Knight. Then we've spoken about this a little bit, but yeah, it's a support one. So what on that one?
So he's a support. He can feel like a bit of a glorified DPS, if anything. Holy Knight has lots of knockdowns. Lots and lots of knockdowns. He suffers in the sense that he has very little super armor. He only has one stable super armor in his core meta build. So once that's down, he doesn't really have many ways of protecting himself. He has hard stiff immunity at times, but even then, it's a little bit limited. So he is surprisingly squishy as a class. I'd say Holy Knight is a lot easier to pin down than Bard, even though Bard is kind of the backline range caster, and Holy Knight is the melee one that you want to be engaging with. He's actually quite easy to interrupt and to catch. But at the same time, he has lots of damage reduction skills, and he has lots of ways of keeping you on your toes. Bards, you have lots of you have the Overture Storm, which is the big stun, and you have the lots of wide AoEs and defensive skills to kind of protect herself and peel her allies. Whereas the way that Holy Knight peels for his allies is by being aggressive. You get a knockdown, they roll, you get another knockdown, that's it. You Sword of Justice, you do your damage, you beat them up. And the thing with Holy Knight is his identity is very strong. His identity is a buff on his sword that increases his hitbox and damage massively by 40%.
Wow.
So when he has identity, he's very, very difficult to deal with. But if you can stop him, that's his biggest burst and support period interrupted. So if you can keep an eye out on a Holy Knight when he has identity, and you can kind of exploit the fact that he doesn't have that many resistances to keep him locked down, then you can deny a lot of his playmaking power, is what I would say, right? He has lots of ability to make things happen in a match because of that kind of aggressive knockdown support. It's a very well-rounded, I would say, in that regard. So if you can shut him down during these critical periods, and you can always keep an eye on the Holy Knight and punish him when he goes in, then you can deal with him, even though he's a very strong class.
Lovely. All right, so that's the warrior classes. Shall we move on to the fighters? And then we've got, is it worth putting Stiker and Wardancer together, or do you want to talk about them separately?
I think they're pretty similar. I think a lot of the issues that plague Wardancer also plague Stiker, but in my opinion, Stiker is just a better version of Wardancer, sadly. Again, it's one of those things where balance can always be an issue. Wardancer is one of the classes that I think is universally considered to be in a weak spot right now. But prior to the April patch, she was really high tier. She was really strong. And the only thing that they changed was one skill. They removed Super Armor from Spiral Blast. That's all they did. Oh wow! And she went from being an incredibly dominant class to kind of one of the weakest ones. So she's a class where I'm gonna be talking about her strengths and weaknesses, but balance changes are most likely going to be coming, and she is probably one of the ones that is going to get buffed. She's already been buffed in some of the recent Korean patches.
Okay.
Hasn't really done much for her place in the meta, but it's clear that they're aware that she's in a little bit of a weaker place, and I think that a lot of the weakness that I say of the class now did not necessarily exist just 4 months ago.
Right.
But it does now. So it's something that in 4 months' time, and maybe once we do get an AAU, those issues will probably not exist anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, so actually going into both Wardancer and Striker, they're the opportunist classes, kind of how I was talking about Zerk, right? They go in and then they back off, and it's not because they have high cooldowns like Zerk. It's quite the opposite. Battlemaster and Striker have very low cooldowns. In fact, they're probably Striker doesn't really have any mana issues, but Wardancer is a class that has lots and lots of mana issues. You're going to run out of mana all the time in Wardancer because you have lots of low cooldown engages, and you feel like you can always be doing something. You're not going to be hard capped by your cooldowns. You're going to be hard capped by your mana.
Okay,
that's the resource that you're managing. But the way that the opportunists is they do damage of everything they do. You don't have to set up a big burst and a big skill. You don't have to bait a person to roll and then recash them a second time. Everything that Battlemaster and Striker does damage. You get hit by 10k here, you get hit by 15k there, you get hit by another 15k here. You're always dishing out damage just by landing your skills, which makes them really engaging and fun to play. But at the same time, the issue that plagues them is they have no resistances whatsoever. Striker has one, which is why I think he's just kind of a bit of a better version of Wardancer.
Okay.
Wardancer doesn't have any. So she struggles when she wants to stick to someone, right? She's a melee class, a pure melee character, but she can't stick on her target because she's very easy to peel off. All of her attacks are very high committal. At the same time, they have very low resistances. So just by zooming around the map and landing a kick here, landing a kick there, you can do a lot of damage, you can get a lot of knockdowns, and you can really enable your team. But at the same time, you have to be very careful about the times that you're going in as these classes. If you're fighting a Wardancer, the counter is kind of wait for them to go in and try to punish them when they try to overcommit. When they go on one person thinking that they can get a 1v1 because they're still really strong at 1v1, but the moment that you now are in that 3v3 scenario, you have someone else that can peel them off. And you can convert their engage into your engage. And that's where they suffer. And Striker is pretty much the same. He doesn't suffer from mana issues though, and he has one super armor that lets him kind of get out of situations, of sticky situations. But it's still very much the same thing, right? He kind of wants to go in. He's a high committal melee character, so you want to be peeling him off your teammates, and that way you can kind of deny the damage potential that the class has and the enabling potential that they can do for their team.
Lovely. So yeah, watch out for the engage and try and peel them off your teammates and stuff. Really.
Yeah. Don't try to 1v1 them. You'll probably lose. But remember, it is a team game, and in that team situation, that's when it becomes quite difficult to maintain your pressure. Perfect.
Okay. So Scrapper, aka Infighter, next. I love this class myself. I played this. This was the one that I started with when I played first back in Korea in like 2018. I love the feel of it. But yeah, what's your thoughts on Scrapper?
Yeah, so she looks really cool, and she is probably one of the real rushdown characters of this game. She has many ways of sticking on you. She has lots of ways of dashing and knocking you down at the same time. So an Infighter is gonna stick on you like glue, and it's something that she can do very well. She has very, very big bursts. She does a lot of damage with the skill Death Sense, which is a little blood orb, which explodes. But it only does big damage if you take a specific tripod that increases the damage of that skill. That means that you'd be sacrificing super armor, you'd be sacrificing immunity on that skill. So she has to kind of pick between either she's going to do very big damage on you, but it's a lot easier to peel her off and interrupt her, or she's going to take a lot lower damage but be kind of eternally chasing someone down and kind of sticking to them all the time. So I think she she can be pretty solid, but I do think she's on the weaker side right now because she has to commit a lot. Again, as one of those pure melee characters.
Yeah.
And she has to commit a lot, and her burst is something that needs a lot of setup. All her big damage skills are not quick; they are very slow. It's something that you need to have the person stunned, or they need to have no roll to actually land these skills, or you have a very long wind-up time. Like Fist of Destruction, she's like punching the ground and spikes start coming out. It takes a long time for that to come out, and that's a free opportunity to go in and hard CC her, so you interrupt the burst. If she's using Death Sentence and she doesn't have that super armor pod, you can use Hard Stiffness to interrupt it, and now she just lost all her damage. So the thing with Infighter is she's very annoying. Probably don't try to 1v1 her. You might not do too well, and she is going to stick to you. But if you can play as a team and you can interrupt the Infighter when they go on your team, and your team's looking out for you as well, it can be very difficult for the Infighter to actually get that damage out. She has to work very hard for not that big of a reward. So if you can kind of always keep an eye on the Infighter on the side and see what it is that they're doing, and kind of try and peel them off and try and shut down their engages, then they can't really do much because they are pure melee and they are a rushdown class.
That's it, yeah. I mean, just going by my experience again by Gunslinger, and what I was talking about before, focusing a lot on trying to evade and kite people, just so I don't die because they're so squishy. It's like as a Gunslinger. I've noticed that like blades are really hard for me to get away from, but Infighters are like almost on like another level. Just my own little experience so far. Because a Berserker or a Destroyer or something, I can kite round generally quite well if I'm on point. An Infighter, I'll use like nearly all of my mobility skills, and they'll use all of theirs, and we'll go halfway across the arena, and then she'll still get me at the end, and I'm like, and all I was trying to do was dodge everything. So yeah, that's I just like I say, I love the look of the class and stuff, but yeah, it's good information there. So next we have the Soulfist or Soulmaster, known as.
So she is probably the most all-rounder of the all-rounders, is what I would say. She does everything. She has a very strong melee burst. She has very good ranged PO and ranged support options. Has pretty good mobility. She is almost considered a pseudo support because of her skill called Inner Key Discharge, which reduces damage taken by a team by 50% for about 8 seconds or so. And it's the lowest cooldown in the game. Most classes at max agility, it's usually around 45 seconds for the skill cooldown. But Infighters is a lot lower, and she has an identity skill where she kind of, if I recall correctly, she kind of has lower cooldown as you go higher up in your different stages. So if you're using your skill at stage 3, which is the maximum stage, you're actually going to get quite low cooldown, a lot of use of most of her skills. So she's good at everything, I would say. The one thing that she's not good at is dueling, and that's her primary weakness. She has a very limited amount of hard stiff immunity. So against Gunslingers, Devil Hunters, Arcanas, heck, even Hawkeyes, any class that has a decent amount of hard stiffness can really shut Soulmaster down, or Soulfist, because she has one kind of super armor skill in her standard meta build, and she has one hard stiff immunity, which is her dashes, her instant step, her mobility skill. Aside from that, she's pretty easy to interrupt. She has great ways of covering space. The little Hadouken, the 3 fireballs that fly around, key palm. So they fly really far. They have huge hitboxes. She's great at controlling space. She has a massive stun beam that is really difficult to avoid if you're not saving space, your spacebar all immunity specifically for that skill. So she can peel very well. And when she's in a high identity stage, she does like half your health in one combo more. She just deletes people. Some of the highest damage output in the game when she's at a high stage. But keep in mind that she does run out of juice. She goes into stage 1, usually stage 2 straight away, because stage 1 is very low damage. And she gets, that damage buff, that kind of cooldown reduction buff, those enhanced skills essentially by going into that form. So she goes to level 2, and that's when you're playing against Soulfist. When she goes into level 3, you have to be very afraid, because that's when they get most of their damage out. They're incredibly explosive during this period. But once they're out of level 3, they go into, level 0. And during that time, you're not going to see an aura in them. It's very easy to spot when they don't have their identity up. And their damage is really low. It's practically negligible, and they don't have mana like other classes. They have chi, and if your chi gauge runs out, which it does very quickly if you don't have identity, then you can't do anything. You literally have to wait until your chi gauge refills entirely before you can use another skill. So it's a very rotational clockwork class. While she's in stage 2, she's pretty decent. When she's at stage 3, she's very dangerous. When she's at stage 0 and she resets, that's when you want to go to the Soulmaster, because she can't use more than 3 skills in a row without running out of juice. Yeah. And since she already struggles with dueling other classes, if you can rush the Soulmaster down, then they're gonna feel entirely helpless when dealing with you, even though they're a really, really solid all-rounder.
Amazing, because again, I've been playing Gunslinger and I've been playing Soulfist, and I've noticed all of that completely. As soon as you go back to stage 0, and being someone again newer, like kind of doing this, I would fire a bunch of skills off, and then I was like, oh, I'm out of chi, as you'd say. Yeah. And then it recharges really fast, or at least it seems like it charges fast, but you can't do anything. You're literally using your basic attack, it's
like a 2-second period. So what happens is it recharges in kind of small bursts when it's not emptied. Once it's emptied completely, it recharges really quickly. But it's a 2-second period where all of your skills are locked out. You can space and you can basic attack, and that's it. Yeah. And if you go into stage 3, stuck in that mode for 30 seconds. That's 30 full seconds of you just kind of having to hold back, play PO, play support, and just kind of you go from being kind of a hybrid DPS to being a strictly backline supporter or backline enabler. That's kind of what you have to do, and you don't have a choice. You have to do that. So that's when you want to go in them and you want to exploit that weakness.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the last one of the fighters one is the what we're going to get is the Glaiver. Is that the word? Because it's Lancemaster. But
yeah, it's Lancemaster. That's the data mine name that they had for it. So, of course, subject to change. They haven't made any announcements, but Glaiver seems to be what they're going to be calling it. But Glaiver is very much like a rushdown DPS. She's melee, but she actually has a lot of good range tools. She has like a spear throw or stab from range, Red Dragonflight, which crits. It always crits if you get a perfect zone on it. For 35 to 40k, it's crazy. There's a lot of damage. She has a tornado that she sends flying forwards. That's incredibly disruptive and difficult to play around. And I would say she's probably the strongest 1v1 class in the game. Okay, you do not want to be dueling Lancemaster. Of course, 1v1 is very much counterclassy. There are always classes that counter others. But I think Lancemaster is a class that's consistently has good matchups across the board. So she's like a melee who's also a bit of an all-rounder, and she has great damage. She's like such a great class in pretty much everything she does.
Wow. Okay.
So she can be really, really difficult to kind of keep away. It feels like she gets the best of all worlds. But there is a thing with Lancemaster which is quite important to keep in mind, and that is although she has lots of hard stiff immunity, she has only one knockdown immunity, one super armor. Okay. Usually in her meta build, which is Sky Wheel. She does a little spinny thing in the air and then she stabs the ground and that's it. There are, builds that run armor on kind of one of her burst skills. A little kind of like dragon swing. I remember Ring of Light is what it's called. So she does a little dragon swing, and some people run armor on that, but it's a lot slower. It's usually not as good. Some people run armor on the Sky Wheel extended, so you can use it twice, and that gives you a little bit more time to stay safe. But while Lancemaster is super strong across the board, she is still a melee. She still has to go in. And if Skywheel is down, having classes that can knock her up, or knock her down, or peel her away from your friends, means that she can actually struggle on sticking to people. She has a lot of mobility, and she can rush people down very well, but at the same time, she can put herself into a lot of risk by committing too hard. I'm just saying, don't be overconfident as a Lancemaster, because you have so many great tools, but you may be under the illusion that the tools are so great that you're untouchable, and in reality, that's not true. You are going to get caught. Yeah. And Lancemaster is in a bit of a situation where she's mostly dependent on Chu skills to do most of her damage. Okay. Being that Ring of Light, which is a swing, and Red Dragonflight, which is that spear. That spear like stab, the range throw.
Yep.
And while she does kind of do damage of all of her skills, a little bit like Battlemaster, it's not as much. So by interrupting these critical moments where she's kind of going in for the burst,
Yep.
then you can shut down a lot of the damage potential that Lancemaster is bringing to her team. And it's kind of like a rush down DPS. That's what she wants to be doing. It's one of those classes. Don't get caught in a 1v1. Remember, it is a team game. Don't try to challenge the Lancemaster. And you may find it difficult to actually, rush her down because of her mobility. But once she tries to commit, that's when she's weakest. And the points in which she tries to engage to do her damage is usually quite predictable. It's, she's going to do Tornado, and then she's going to come in and Ring of Light. Or she's going to get a double knockdown, and then she's going to Red Dragonflight. And once you find out these little patterns that Lancemasters have when it comes to getting their damage out, you can interrupt them, kill them off your team, and just shut them down.
Lovely. Okay, that's amazing info. I've seen them. They're very flashy and they look really good. Lots of spins and flips. Yeah. Visually, they're lovely to see. And it was going to be the class that I was going to come straight in with, but then as soon as I found out it wasn't going to be at launch, I thought maybe I'll learn it like later on or something. I'll learn the others first. Okay, so moving on to the gunners. We've got Gunslinger and Deadeye, which is AKA Devil Hunter. And again, do you want to put these two together, or do you want to talk about them separately?
I think I can put them together. They're very, very similar. They're a bit of like hybrid DPSs. They say Gunslinger is much more strictly a range class. She has much better range tools than Devil Hunter does or Deadeye does. Whereas Deadeye has better melee contests and better melee engages. So the key differences between them is Gunslinger has a focus shot, which is a big single sniper rifle attack that does a lot of damage from range. She has much better mobility than Devil Hunter does, actually. She's a lot safer than Devil Hunter. But at the same time, she really lacks knockdown tools outside of her kind of sniper rifle skills. So she has really great ways of coming in and coming out, and she's great at dueling classes at 1v1. But the moment that you get classes that you kind of have to knock them down to deal with them, like Lancemaster or Scouter when he goes into form, or Demonic when she goes into form, or a class like Destroyer, then she starts having a little bit of an issue because she lacks kind of the melee contest potential. But she is incredibly strong. In Russia, she's probably one of the strongest classes, period. But as I said, Korea does get a patch that removes a sliding pod from her, which gives her an unreactable engage. Right. And Devil Hunter is very similar to Gunslinger, except that he has a kick that knocks people up, which means that kick is fully protected, it's super armor. So you can contest a lot of things in melee range, and he can set up a very strong burst off of that kick. You can do a kick, then you throw a frost grenade, and then you just do crazy amounts of damage with Great Disaster. Just a little sniper skill where he carpet bombs the ground. And both of these classes have great combo potential. They're the combo movie classes of Lost Ark. You're playing Devil May Cry. You're running around. You're super mobile. You get catches. You're good at ones, and you get incredible combos. If people leave you alone, you can 100-0 pretty much anybody if you have your skills up. But when you are fighting these classes, you have to keep in mind that they are hybrid, and they are also quite glassy. They have some of the lowest defense values in the entire game. So when they kind of go to engage, you can actually punish them quite heavily if they try to overcommit. A lot of their catching skills that inflict hard stiffness, like Gun Dance, don't actually have hard stiffness immunity itself. So it's one of those things where you can probably try and trade with a skill that is resistance, right? So understanding how their kit works and working around their periods, right? Are they going to be sniping now, so you want to back off? Are they going to be going in and use their shotgun? So maybe you want to try and contest, or you want to try and interrupt their engages, or do you want to do the opposite, right? Do you think that the player that you're going against overcommits when they go into shotgun and they're trying to get like a last supper, versus a player who's using sniper skills and he's too defensive, so he kind of breaks down when you go in? It's a little bit hard to advise how to fight a Devil Hunter and Gunslinger, because I think these are classes that have a lot of personal flair. You're fighting the player as well as you're fighting the class. So identify how it is that the player plays this kind of hybrid all-round mobile class, and figure out which points they crack and punish them heavily for it, because they do need to set up their combos to do damage outside of like perfect shots and focus shot. Outside of their sniper skills, they do have to set up their damage combos. And the cyclical period of kind of going in and backing off is where you can play that push and pull, read the ebbs and flows of the game, and really burst them down very rapidly.
Yeah, that's amazing new points and stuff there, because I mean I've found that, and I've found that some games I've been overcommitting, and this is like a newer player thing where I've been going in with my gunslinger and just overcommitting, and when you get punished, dead. like they're so squishy that you can just absolutely die. And then I've had other games where I've played like too defensive, trying to focus more on the rifles, and then once you fired your rifle skills, like the cooldowns aren't too short, so you gotta if you're not going to go in and try and set up a combo and get like some shotgun kills or shots off, then you kind of like walk around the Mac line not really doing like, which can get your team killed, I've found.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the things that is important to raise as well. There's lots of classes that are a little bit better at dueling the runs or doing 1v1s, etc. But one thing that I think more so Deadblade than Gunslinger, because of her ranged abilities with focus shot, but one thing that both of them suffer is they aren't particularly good at peeling for their team. They are incredibly dominant forces on the battlefield as independent classes, but a Hawkeye, for example, is going to be doing a lot more team support, and is going to be saving their team a hell of a lot more often than a Deadblade or a Gunslinger does. They want to be getting into that backline position where they're harassing their casters, or getting into these 1v1 scenarios where they think they can win, or kind of going in, punishing, and then coming out, like forcing quickly 2v1 the enemy team, and then coming back and then returning through 2v2. And these are classes that they struggle a little bit with peeling, I would say. And I guess that's the weakness. It's not necessarily, the class is, again, it's a team game, right? So it's one of those, sometimes you don't even have to focus on the class, and just like Destroyer, you win by not fighting them. Sometimes you win against Gunslinger and Deadblade by focusing on their team, because they may just feel helpless when it comes to helping them.
And I've experienced that myself, so well said on that one. All right, so that's Gunslinger there. So Artillerist, aka Blaster, your main.
Blaster, yes, a class that I have a lot of experience with, one of the classes that I actually hit master with. Blaster is super strong. He's probably the tankiest range class, and he is very defensive. It's really difficult to go in on a Blaster. He doesn't have that many super armors. He has 2 super armors, so he has Gatling gun, which kind of makes him stationary, and it's relatively easy to punish. But what he has is he's a bit of a baby destroyer, because he has the energy field where he pops up a field, and just like Destroyer, for about 8 seconds, you cannot knock him down or interrupt him with anything other than a hard CC.
Yep.
The difference is it's a shield, so if you break the shield, you kind of stop them. And unlike Destroyer, their combos are very highly committed. You have to set up your combo. So the usual thing that an Artillerist is going to do is they're going to get you with Gatling, they're going to roll in, stun you, and set up a bunch of mines and nukes. And if that hits you, you die. That's it. You are dead. There is nothing that you can do. Even if you have roll, if you get caught by that Gatling, you're dead. So it is an incredibly strong class, and probably I would say the biggest pub stomper. It's against beginners, newer players. If you're learning the game, Artillerist is probably the class that you're going to struggle the most with, because you're going to feel really helpless when you get caught.
Yeah.
But the weaknesses of Artillerist is that he's really immobile. Gatling gun, his super armors kind of keep him standing still. And when his energy field is down, unlike a class like Destroyer, which has other armors to keep him safe, Blaster is a little bit out of juice. And the biggest thing is his combo, the Gatling into stun, usually means you have to roll in. So if you use your spacebar to roll in, remember, track your enemy cooldowns. That's one of the things you have to be keeping in mind, right? If he has the spacebar to roll in, he now cannot roll out of any of the skills. He can't interrupt his own skills. Yeah. So then he becomes very vulnerable during that period. So when you're fighting against a Blaster, you have to keep in mind that it is a team game. If you get caught, do your best not to get caught. Use basic attacks to avoid Gatling. be wary of the missile bombings and the things that he puts into the ground, and try not to overcommit, because Blaster can punish engages very easily. He shines defensively, but when he is trying to be offensive, when he's trying to get those combos, when he's trying to run in, because he's so slow and because he's very reliant on certain cooldowns to do these things, namely his roll and his stun, it means that he can be peeled off relatively easily. So it is a very heavy team play class. Feels like an unstoppable wall that you literally cannot go in against. But sometimes the best thing you can do is just not go in, play backwards, play it safe, force him to engage, and then punish his engages, because the blast is the one that's going to be feeling helpless at that point.
That's it. I mean, one thing I did when I got caught by blasters, as a gunslinger, as you said, like when they set up the wombo combo, the damage, you just like, you might as well just be like this for a minute, because you can't really do anything. You can't, the stun and the CC and knockup, like you can't do anything. The nuke comes down, bam, like then. So so what I was doing was using, I think it's control and click to like ping, like help.
Pinging.
I was like help, like, because you can't do anything and you know the damage is coming. So if no one else helps you, then wham.
Yeah, that's I was actually about to say that, like, that's the best thing. The way how you fight Blaster, use the ping system. You get caught by Gatling, it's like, all right, just ping help once, control click down, and then be like, okay guys, please watch out, because if he rolls in and stuns, you have to stop him. Where I believe the highest unrollable combo damage in the game. If your team lets a Blaster roam free, you're gonna die. But if you interrupt the Blaster and you play as a team, Blaster's gonna feel very, very helpless, because he does struggle going in, and he is dependent on very long setups to get his damage out.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, amazing. Okay, so Sharpshooter, aka Sharp Eye, that is the right
Hawkeye,
words?
yes.
Hawkeye,
yeah.
Sorry, Hawkeye. Okay, so info on that one.
Hawkeye is very much a ranged enabler class. The way that Hawkeye works, sadly, he's a bit of an inconsistent class, is what I would say. There are different ways of playing Hawkeye. There are two major builds. One is a stealth build, where they can kind of go into stealth, and they're very difficult to see. Sometimes you're just going to be fighting and you realize, wait, why are we fighting, a 3v2? Where is the Hawkeye? And then suddenly you get engaged on from the back. He's going to use Claymore, which is a mine explosion that like electroshocks everybody, and it has a huge range. It's really difficult to avoid. You can react to it, but if you're not expecting it, because of the range, it's really difficult to deal with. Which means you might need to just be saving your spacebar to dealing with that Hawkeye Claymore. So he's very good at peeling for his team, and he's surprisingly good at being slippery. Even if you're not running the stealth build, the alternative build is one where you're running lots of super armors and lots of mobility skills. So you're always moving around the map, but always kind of running away, making it very difficult for people to rush you down. The problem with Hawkeye, though, is that he is very dependent on landing his snipe, which is the one where he charges up for a very long time, and then he lands that snipe on you, and it's a critical base class, an RNG base class, because the pod that they take on that skill, you do about 150% more crit damage if it crits. But if it doesn't crit, you don't do that much damage. So you get hit by snipe, and maybe you take 15k, or you get hit by snipe and you lose 60k, and you're dead. And they can do it from very far away. Yeah. So the thing with Hawkeye is they are gonna be trying to peel for their team and get catches and converts off of that. They're relatively defensive in the sense that they try to support their team with their hard CC and their knockdown skills and their arrows, their charge shot, trying to get damage that way. Just trying to protect their team. But at the same time, they can do a lot of damage by catching you by surprise when you least expect it. So they can work both ways. But because they are very reliant on a small number of skills, if you can interrupt those skills, you can shut down Hawkeye's ability to his team almost completely, right? So,
sorry guys, quick freeze frame here. There was an audio glitch, but Lin-0 just says if you can avoid the Claymore and the electroshock
that he does from the mine, and if you can interrupt his snipe skill, the Hawkeye is going to struggle doing damage, and he's just going to be a little bit of a glorified peel bot, which might not work too well if he doesn't have the damage to to sustain good pressure on your team.
Yeah.
So it's one of those classes that is unfortunately can be really good or really bad, but it depends a lot on the player and a lot on the luck of the player, on whether or not they're landing those snipes and they're landing those crit snipes.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, sorry, I did actually know it was Hawkeye. I just wrote it down wrong at my notes. Sorry about that.
Right, Sharpshooter,
yeah.
Sharpshooter Hawkeye, yeah.
Yes. Perfect. So the last one of the gunners then is the Scouter, aka the Machinist. Is that another data mined name?
I think I'm not sure, honestly. I'm actually not familiar with what the data mine name was for Scouter. I think it is Machinist.
Okay.
But we'll check. So yeah, Machinist is it's a pretty interesting class. They're kind of a range damage dealer, and they're very, very safe. They've kind of been very dominant as a class, and they still are in all the servers really, because they can do a lot of damage from range while never really having to commit. And the reason for that is they don't just use skills themselves. They have a little drone, and you command that drone to use skills. So you have to micro your drone, and it's really difficult to play the class. But if you can play it properly, you can peel for your team without ever having to put yourself at risk, and you can do a lot of damage without ever having to put yourself at risk. He has some melee converts where he does like a little roll, a little machine gun attack, and then he stuns, and bam, kamikaze drones. You lose at least like 20-25k more in a single burst, and his skills are not that high cooldown, so you can kind of cycle around between doing a little bit of a hybrid melee engage and blowing people up, or just peeling from range with your drone and your long range skills. So Scouter is a very mobile, very slippery, hard to pin down class that does a lot of damage. But at the same time, they have very, very few armors, very few super armors, and also has a very limited hard stiff immunity. So classes that have the ability to rush down Scouter, classes like Gunslinger, Deathblade, Arcana, these classes can kind of prevent Scouter from doing much, simply because the Scouter is now concerned with running away the whole game and can't actually get his drone setups and his combos to work.
Right.
So the Scouter is one of these classes where you don't want to overcommit and chase them down too much, because they have the tools to keep you away. But at the same time, if you find an opportunity to go in, if the team gets pushed back, you may choose to go on the Scouter, because mobility is their defense. So they can't hold the ground. They have to move to stay alive. So if you can't, the best part is trying to force the Scouter to separate from the team, try and get them to roll away. And it is a team game. You don't have to try and duel the Scouter alone. You just have to separate them from the team and get them into a place where you can catch them and you can burst them down. The defenses aren't particularly high, so even if they're slippery and even if they're ranged, they're not untouchable. Because they're so mobility dependent when it comes to staying alive. I would say be wary of their form. They can go into an Iron Man form where they are incredibly powerful. They have a shield, and until that shield is broken, they're gonna stay in form. I mean, it has a timer, of course, which I think is about like 20-25 seconds or so that they stay in form. It's quite a while that they're a big threat. And during that time, they're completely immune to hard stiffness. You have to knock them down, or you have to break the shield. So make Scouter your priority during that time. But it is during that form probably going to be being a little bit more aggressive and be a little bit more melee, because he loses access to the drone and those range skills. So while it's a very high value, high reward form, it's also where you can try and shut him down the most and punish him for going in.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. It's worth mentioning as well that the Scouter we won't be getting at the start of EU and NA release as well. But you never know in the future. All right, so we've gone through most of them, so not too many left. How are you doing? All right? Still all right?
Yeah, doing okay.
The information's amazing, by the way, absolutely amazing. So next, let's move on to the mages. And shall we start with Summoner?
Yes, Summoner, my first main, the first class that ever hit Master on. Summoner is a ranged DPS, and boy, is she a DPS. Summoner, as I said previously, is the class that has the highest damage potential in the game. Her identity skill, she gets these big summons that not pets, but actual skills, like summoning attacks, essentially. And Phoenix is the most characteristic skill for Summoner. If you get hit by Phoenix, you are going to lose a lot of health. And Phoenix is gigantic.
It is.
It's harder to miss than it is to hit. And that's from someone that has struggled playing the class a lot, right? So
yeah.
And the biggest power that Summon brings to team is she can get lots of single or double catches. So because Phoenix is so big, she can hit 2 people at once. And what would be like 40k damage becomes 80k simply because she hit 2 people. You get a triple Phoenix, and that would be over 100k damage, just like that. So she is one of those characters where she's kind of a mage in the sense that you do not want to let her free cast. She builds gauge over time, not just by landing her skills, but passively by using certain skills. So when she uses her shield, she gains a bead. When the little gremlin pet explodes, she has a 50% chance of gaining a bead. When she uses some little birds that fly forward slowly, she has an 80% chance of gaining a bead. So the way that you counter Summoner is you sit on her, you rush her down. She is a class that needs to be babysat. She has no mobility. She has her spacebar, and that's it. No other mobility whatsoever. And her meta build usually only has 1 super armor. Sometimes it may have 2, but it's relatively short. So she has like 1 reliable super armor, I would say. She doesn't have many resistances. So rushdown classes can, like a Zerk, a Destroyer, a Demonic, these classes can just sit on Summoner and kind of invalidate them just by not letting them cast and not letting them get their identity up. Summoners are the players who are going to be spamming help ping the most often, without a doubt. But then that's the thing, right? So if you let them free cast, you lose. But if you can sit down on the Summoner and shut them down, you win. Win condition with a Summoner is if you have a Summoner on your team, don't try to be top DPS because that's not what you want to be doing. Try to appeal for the Summoner, try to enable the Summoner, because even if the Summoner does 700k, if the Summoner is also taking 700k, that's not much value that they bring into the team. So try to protect your Summoner or try to rush down the enemy Summoner, and be wary of the Phoenixes. Try to track the identity and when you think they have Phoenix. If they use a Phoenix, they cannot use another Phoenix again unless they use their Awakening. So once their Phoenix is down, once they use their identity, that's the time that you might want to go in because you no longer have to fear it. And I think just one last tip against Summoner is, while rushing down a Summoner is usually how you win, the alternative way of winning against a Summoner is by not even having her on your screen to begin with. If either you are super close and you're rushing her down, or you are so far that she can't reach you, right? Even though she's very ranged, a good Summoner is going to be saving Phoenixes for guaranteed periods. She's going to have to get a catch of horses, or it's going to have to hard CC you. Something where she knows she can get that damage out. Because if you use a Phoenix and you miss, that's all of your damage gone. So either you play very defensive and you force the Summoner to kind of have to move a little bit further in, and then you rush her down suddenly, or you just keep the pressure going 24/7 and you don't give her any room to breathe.
Because this is it. Like, it's worth noting as well. Like, if you're the kind of person that maybe wants to get loads and loads of damage off or so, sometimes it's not that important to be the top of the leaderboard in damage, as you were saying. Like, if you have a summoner on your team, it doesn't matter if you've got 0 kills, but if the summoner has 1 million damage and won the game for you, you're still gonna win the game. So if you want to climb, even if you're a damage orientated character, not a support, if you can just help a summoner win the game, I guess kind of for you, but maybe like with you.
No, it's always a combination, right? Usually the summoner is going to be the top damage. What I'm saying is don't tunnel vision on, focusing and trying to do some stupid 1v1 of the enemy Devil Hunter when you could instead just kind of hold back, let them engage on the summoner, and then get your combos by peeling for your summoner. That's something that you can do. But
perfect.
Maybe I'm talking a little bit too much about Summoner because it is a class that I've played a lot. But one thing that I also want to shout is their pets. It is a pet class. If you're playing Summoner, microing your pets is really important to high level play. So Summoner is just land your Phoenixes and you win. That's great. But once you start getting to high level play, microing your pets is a really, really big deal. And what I would say is when playing Summoner, you can play a little bit push-pull with the pets because they're very high cooldown. So she summons the pets and they are very impactful. The big golem guy, the coral golem,
Yep.
who I believe is actually gonna have its skin changed. It's been changed in KR. It's gonna be like a big teddy bear, and
Okay.
and and he can do a stun.
Yep.
He does a shoulder charge and he stuns you, which can be very annoying because the summoner can be a mile away and you're still gonna get stunned. So you try and combo somebody. If that big golem is next to you, be wary because they may interrupt you.
Okay.
And the little red gremlin, which is going to become a little fox, is as a suicide bomber. He jumps at you, he explodes, and he knocks you up and does like 15k damage. So that's a very, very big deal. And handling these pets is an important bit of how you fight summoner because they're so strong.
Yeah.
But you can stop them just by walking. If you keep walking away from the pet, they're gonna attack you and they're gonna miss. And now the attacks are on cooldown, and the summoner is standing there looking like an idiot. So it's one of those things where play around the pets, play around the phoenixes and the identity, and really try and pick these moments where you want to be going in or how you want to be chasing down the summoner. Yeah. It is one of those classes where team play, both with and against, is really important.
Yeah. Okay, no, brilliant info. Just one very quick small thing left on that. Can summoner control the pets? You just talked about micro.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. When I say micro, I'm saying control your pets. You have a pet control button by default. That's shift. You can't change that. That's the same thing with Scouter or Machinist. It's if you want to control the drone, you have to use that little button and you tell the pets where to go. You cannot control the pets individually. You can't tell the golem to go in one place and the gremlin to go into another.
Yep.
They always go to the same place, and it follows a specific order. So movement always takes priority. Even if you mash an attack skill, if you're telling your pet to move around, they're not going to be attacking. They have to get to a location that you tell them to go, then they're going to be attacking.
Okay.
So that's something that's important to keep in mind. And it can be both bad because you tell a pet to go somewhere and use a skill, but then you kind of overshoot, so the pet walks in a little bit more than it should, and by then the time has expired. You fail to interrupt, and it's all gone to nothing. But at the same time, you can do little nifty tricks like you can keep mashing a skill so that it's buffered and keep the pet moving. So then as soon as someone catches you, you can't command pets when you're being hit stun, when you're being hit. Okay. But because the skill has been buffered, as soon as you get caught, the pet's now going to attack them because you can't command the pet anymore, right? So you can essentially make it seem as if you're telling the pet to attack enemies when you get caught, when in reality you're just playing around with the micro of your pets, telling them to move close to you so that as soon as you get caught, they attack the enemy. You have lots of like really interesting high level play that you can do with pet microing.
Nice.
So it is a summoner class. It is a pet class. So playing around the summons is a big deal.
Perfect. Okay. Bard is next.
Bard, the support class of the game. It's if you think healer support, you think Bard. Her identity even is a healing puddle. How you deal with Bard, don't let people stand on a healing puddle for too long, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bard is incredibly dominant as a class. She is a pure support. She's a backliner, and she has the lowest HP and defense values in the game. If you catch a Bard, it's very easy to burst her down. However, she also has some of the biggest damage reduction skills in the game. So she can actually come across as being a lot tankier than other, more melee or DPS classes who you would think would be a lot tankier than a ranged support casting class.
Yep.
So Bard has two main skills that you really want to be looking for.
Yep.
Indomitable Performance and Rhapsody of Light. Indomitable Performance is she does a little dance and she creates a little bubble or a buff around her team. While that buff is up, you cannot hard CC anybody. They have one stack of hard CC immunity. If you hard CC them twice, the second one is going to apply. But if you hard CC them once, that is not going to work. It's just going to be eaten up. And that's a very big thing for Bard, because when you have that Indomitable Performance up, the team can really go in. That's their opportunity. Or they can retreat much more safely. If a Destroyer or a Blaster get Indomitable Performance and they're using Endure Pain or Energy Field, there is literally nothing you can do to stop them. You cannot peel them off because they have hard CC immunity and they have knockdown immunity. So that's it. You can't do anything. It's literally, there is zero counterplay to that other than just trying to run away and trying to buy time until the buff expires. And during that time, the team also takes reduced damage. So these moments, it is a high cooldown skill, around 45 seconds. But these moments are very momentous to Bard.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, the really important skill they want to be looking out for is Rhapsody of Light, which is a little pink circle AoE that literally makes anyone inside of it invulnerable. You don't take damage.
Wow.
Technically you do, but it's such a big damage reduction that even a crit Infighter Awakening under 60 seconds is going to do like 5k damage at best.
Jesus.
So,
right.
So the way that Bard works really, and if I'm going back less than just saying what the skills are and what Bard does as well. She is a support and she thrives in enabling her team. She will rarely be breaking 250k damage dealt in a match, but she's going to make sure that her team is also taking like 250k damage at most, because she has so many ways of reducing damage taken. And lots of her spells, her skills are very protected, so it can be really difficult to pin down a Bard. When you couple in the hard CC immunity, the damage reduction, the slow from her march skill where she runs away, and just the overall number of immunities that she has, she can be an incredibly tanky and hard to pin down character that kind of lets her team go wild.
Right.
But at the same time, her weakness is she is a support. She is not going to be doing that much damage. And the best way of dealing with Bard is learning when to change your focus quickly, knowing when it's good to focus on her teammates and when it's good to focus on her. Because when her buffs are down, when she doesn't have a defense, or when she's out of skills, if you chase down the Bard and you keep focusing the Bard, they're gonna die eventually because they have very low defense. So it's one of those situations where you can be focusing her buddy, and then as soon as she uses Rhapsody of Light, well, that guy's not going to take any damage, so instantly swap your focus to Bard. Or try and bait skills, try and force the Bard to kind of come in and try to peel for her team, and then push at that moment and try to rush her down and prevent her from casting her skills. So it's one of those classes that's very, very strong and very hard to deal with if the Bard is competent, doubly so if her team is competent. But she is support, and support is what she does. So if you can mix and match which targets you're kind of going for in a match and coordinate well with your team, you can shut down Bard and make them feel like they're summoner.
Amazing. Right. Perfect. Okay, so the last one of the mages is the Sorceress. Hey.
The Sorceress. And you've completely skipped over Arcana, sadly, I think. Which is my main.
No, it's on a different page. I've got Microsoft Word and it's on the different page. Sorry, it is. Sorry. Okay.
One of my favorites.
Sorry.
I'll go with Sorceress first, though. It's a little bit hard to say much about Sorceress because, I don't speak about any of these with authority, mind you. I'm just speaking of my impressions, what I think it is, what I try to do with these classes, and Sorceress even more so. It's something that it's difficult for me to comment on because my experience with her is limited. The experience with everybody for the class is limited.
Very much so.
She is very much a ranged enabler. She is like, how would I say? She is Hawkeye meets Summoner meets Battlemaster is kind of how I would go with. She is strictly a pure range class, kind of like Summoner. But she focuses predominantly on enabling her team, like Hawkeye. So she has lots of CCs that she can apply, lots of ranged options to catch the enemy team from range. And she can do very big damage converts from range. And at the same time, she's a little bit like Battlemaster in the sense that she doesn't have any big burst, but she has lots of knockdowns. She's very annoying, and she has practically no protections. But she's very easy to kind of rush down. But because she can do all of that from range, she can still feel really safe.
Amazing.
She's probably the class that I would say is the easiest to rush down. I think even Summoner has better self-peel than Sorceress does. But Sorceress is incredibly strong when it comes to enabling her team and just kind of being out of sight, It's one of those things where it's out of sight, out of mind. You don't see the Sorceress, you don't realize just how much work she's putting in and how much damage she's doing. Most of the games I have on Sorceress on Korea, when I see like the good Sorceresses, they're doing 500k and they're taking 100k. It's insane. They don't get touched because they can do everything from range. So as a Sorceress, it's peel for your team, abuse your field of view so that you can get these kind of unreactable catches and do a little bit of damage here, do a little bit of damage there. Don't overcommit, and eventually you're probably going to be the top damage done just by landing your skills.
Yep.
At the same time, be wary of rushdown and work well with your team. Make sure that the enemy doesn't see you, but that your team is seeing you at all times, because you are very easy to rush down, and you don't have any ways of holding ground. Even Summoner has, horses, released will, or Earth Shatter, some kinds of skill that can at least buy her some time. Whereas Sorceress' way of buying time is her dash, is her identity. It's just getting the hell away.
Yep.
But when getting the hell away is moving away from your team into the enemy team, because that's the only option that they've given you, you're going to be in a heap of trouble. So I think she's a very, very strong ranged enabler class. Is what I would say.
Amazing. And then sorry, I'll scroll down, and then so Arcana. Time to talk about Arcana.
Yeah, Arcana, Arcanist. Arcana's role is very confusing. She's a bit like Hawkeye in the sense that she is not a consistent class, because she is a gambler class by name and by her playstyle too. Her identity is she gets cards as she plays, and these cards have different effects. These cards can have incredibly strong effects, like every single attack you do is a guaranteed critical hit and does 50% increased critical damage. And when you consider that Arcana has lots of buffs that increase critical damage on targets, it means that if you pull a death card, which is that specific card that does the crit card, you can just kill somebody in one combo. Doesn't matter. They can be Warlord. They are going to die. That is it. You catch them, they're dead. At the same time, if you don't get good cards or you get unlucky with your cards, you don't really do anything. A card called Twisted Fate, for example, is a 50% chance at 40% damage up or 20% damage down. And the amount of games that I've lost because I've believed that I could get the damage up, but then I get the damage down, and that just ends up meaning that they live a nearly kill combo. They would have died if I got the damage up. But because I got the damage down, they live, and we lose the game because of that. And it's one of those things that happens very frequently. And just like Hawkeye, she's also very crit dependent. So if she gets a crit, you die, because she does increase crit damage. Her skills hit really hard, but if she doesn't get crit, then she does no damage. Usually her skills would be hitting for 5 to 6k with no crit, and then skyrocket to like 16, 17k with crit. So it's a big
difference,
big leap. So the way that she plays depends on what cards the Arcana is going to be getting. She's a hybrid class, so she can peel from range very well. She has unlimited shuffle, which is an AoE, a big AoE that's almost instant, and it does heart stiffness. So that's great for catching people. Arcana is probably one of the most annoying classes for beginners to deal with, because they don't know how to bait these range skills that she has. She can also put down a triangle on the stage that does electroshock, and it's a hard CC, and that completely shuts down a portion of the stage. You have to kind of back off. So she's a little bit weird, because while she herself is mobile and her defense is her mobility, she can also still have presence and a lot of map control, simply because of her big ranged AoEs that she can do to support her team. So she can play very much like a ranged support, but her big burst combo is by going in, doing Flower Dance, and doing a melee combo, right? So she wants to be in melee when she's bursting people down. So it's one of those things where she's very weak when she goes in, even though she can do a lot of damage. And that's kind of where you want to punish Arcana, right? When she goes in, she's very vulnerable. And when she's ranged, she has more limited damage dealing options. She's more playing kind of like a support. So if you can play around this kind of cycle that the Arcana goes, where she's trying to first peel for her team with unlimited shuffle and with a stream of edge, a little triangle, and then you can either rush her down during those periods, or when she goes in, you can kind of punish her engages. Then you can shut her down really well. She is not considered to be too strong at a high level, similar to kind of Hawkeye, because of these consistency issues. But she has not been included in NA and EU, possibly for a reason, and she hasn't received many balance patches in, well, I think like 14, 16 months. So it's likely that they may actually be doing some pretty significant changes to her, and we'll see how that changes her whole play style. Because she, you get the good cards, you are the best class in the game. You get like 2-3 death cards in the game, you're unstoppable. At the same time, you get bad cards, or you don't really get the cards that you need at the right moments. You don't get your crits, and you're relegated to a budget backline support enabler role.
Yeah.
So what she does changes depending on your luck.
So yeah, if you're feeling lucky, then that might be the class for you when
If
it
you're a
releases.
gambler.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Okay, so perfect. So now we're on to the assassin classes. The last kind of 3 here. So Deathblade, aka Blade, I guess the next one.
Blade, I probably mentioned previously, was one of the very easy class to pick up because she's very protected. Blade is really difficult to deal with because she has huge hitboxes. She is very much protected in a lot of them. And she is both great defensively because of her lingers, as well as offensively because of her fast engages. Blade also probably has some of the biggest burst in the game. Her skill, which in NA and EU is called the Moonlight Sonic, is a little like purple AoE, huge AoE skill that doesn't really hit stun anybody. But if she gets the full cast of that, she can do over 30k damage, and her identity buffs her damage by a lot. So she has lots of ways of harassing people, both from range as well as from melee. She is primarily a melee class, but she does have few big hitboxes or slightly ranged tools that can kind of interrupt people. So she's really good at getting knockdowns and forcing the enemy team to roll. She is really good defensively. She's really good in duels. She's like a great all-rounder. The one thing that I would say is the way that you beat Blade, essentially, is the thing that usually goes to most of the melees, right? And it is that they do have to commit. While a lot of her catching abilities and her self-peel abilities have armors and are protected, her burst damage skills are not. Hurricane is not Hurricane now. Moonlight Sonic is the only skill that has a hard stiffness immune, and even that you can just knock her up. And she's kind of stuck while she has to channel that entire thing. So Blade is one of those classes where if you can force her to keep going in, and you can interrupt her damaging skills, they are relatively high cooldown. So she kind of has to back off after, and she can't really do much while she's waiting for them to come back up. So she thrives offensively, and while she is good offensively, that's a good period to punish her. It's kind of how you would deal with Zerk, except that it's the other way around, where Zerk has a very big damage skill with armor and really quick unprotected bursts, whereas Blade is, you need a little bit more of a setup, and your burst takes time to cast, but your engages are very much protected, and you're very safe when you're going in. So it is one of those classes that you kind of want to force them to be aggressive and punish accordingly.
Perfect. Because I've been very tempted to try it, but I think soon I'll try Blade. I love the way it looks and stuff. The skills are quite cool.
Their aesthetics are so good.
It is so good.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so Shadowhunter, aka Demonic.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a class that I've been playing quite a lot recently. Actually, I really like the class. She's a damage dealer, very strictly damage dealer, but she's also a bit of a hybrid. So she has ways of peeling for her team and doing damage from range. She has some very big spikes that do knockdown, and they're gigantic. Even if you know they're coming, they're really hard to dodge. She throws her glaive, like she throws her weapons forwards, and that inflicts hard stiffness, which can interrupt lots of people doing combos. And her hard CC, usually the only hard CC that she runs, Demon Beam, and Demon Ray is again a range skill that she can do from range. So she can peel very efficiently for her team while staying safe. She doesn't have to commit when peeling.
Amazing.
And her engages are really quick, so she can dash in of literally unreactable engages. She's kind of very similar to Zerk in that regard. You go in and then you burst people down. Except that her bursts are super fast. So you kind of go in, you use Enhance, like the little red orb skill. And that skill, when you finish casting, even pushes you back a little bit. You go in, you use a skill, and then you're already kind of retreating, and then you can go back. Or you
Lovely.
kind of go in, you use Crack Blade, which is a big demon that kind of like slams down and knocks people up. You go in, you use that skill, get some damage out, go back.
Mhm.
So it's very much of like a harasser. She goes in, does damage, come out, peel for her team from range. An opportunity presents itself, go in, do damage, come back out, and this constantly going in and out is very difficult to deal with because she definitely has the mobility to outpace a lot of the classes that want to run her down.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have to commit as hard as most of the other melees. It's very difficult to peel a demonic because you don't have much time. She bursts quickly and she gets out.
Lovely.
At the same time, she, like Wardancer, like Battlemaster, she has 0 super armors in her
Right.
meta build. She has
Mhm.
0 resistances whatsoever. So
Ow.
if you can predict her approaches, she would just be dashing into her own death, right? If you have, she really struggles with lingering skills and big hitboxes that cover ground,
Yep.
or classes that can really hold their ground on the stage, like Destroyer, for example,
Yeah.
or a Blast with Shield, because even if she can outrun them, it's very difficult for her to then kind of go in because she's very easily punished.
Amazing.
Mobility is her defense.
Yeah.
But again, because she's a hybrid, she can kind of play that game. She can play the range game as well. Her strength is incredibly mobile, very high damage Rasa. Her weaknesses, she very much lacks in super armor and lacks defensive tools. So if you can either rush her
Yep.
when she's used her mobility to kind of go in and go out, now she's in the back line. If her team is not there to support her and she has no mobility skills, you can rush her down pretty easily. And if you can cover her engages, if you can cover your team and you can kind of force her to go in at an inopportune time, then you can punish her very hardly for it.
Okay.
Though, be wary of her demon form. She will get about 2 of these a game, just like the Scouter Iron Man form.
Yeah.
She's fully immune to hard stiffness during that. You can't catch her. You have to use a knockdown or a hard CC to stop her.
Okay.
And that's when she does the most damage. A single demon form can completely change the game around. So the moment that she uses that form, she is the priority target.
Yeah.
At the same time, she still has no immunities, no armors whatsoever. So if you can knock her down, you can burst her really, really hard. Unlike Scouter, she does not have a shield during that form, so she can die very easily.
Okay, so just watch out for that form, especially get your team maybe do some pings or something and go like kill down or something. Okay, so then the last one, and thank you so much for taking the time going through all of this because I know it's taking a while and stuff, but it's the info is amazing, so thank you on that. The last one is the Reaper, and so the Reaper again is not going to be at launch for us for NAEU. Quite an interesting class, this one as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually Reaper is my guilty pleasure right now. You know, I go in and I'm like, okay, I have to probably practice some of the classes that I main. I want to learn more Shadowhunter, more Demonic, because Arcana is not going to be on release, and Demonic kind of scratches that hybrid DPS itch that I've gotten with Arcana. So I kind of should be practicing other classes, but then I'm like, you know what? I just want to play Reaper because Reaper is super, super fun. She's like the ninja, right? She's the hyper mobile harasser class. She feels a little bit more of like an enabler rather than a damage dealer role because the damage skills don't actually do too much damage. They do damage, but they're not too low cooldown. It's kind of, you use a damage skill and then you kind of back off and you have to try and find an opportunity to use another one. She doesn't really hit too hard, but she's incredibly annoying to deal with. Fighting a Reaper is like fighting a wasp, except one that has like swords on its finger. Because she is probably one of the most mobile classes in the game. She has resistances, lots of hard stiff immunity, and 2 very solid super armors to boot. If a Reaper doesn't want to get caught, she's not going to get caught. She is untouchable. She can just run away. A lot of classes that rely on mobility, even if they have to move away from their team or something like that, you can kind of rush them down and put them into a situation where they are now out of position and they can be pressured in like a 2v1 situation. Reaper doesn't particularly care about that because she's always going to have a tool to get away. if you want to see kind of a juke montages of people, you teleport here, then you dash there, then you dash back, then you jump around, then you literally run circles around people with Reaper. So dealing with Reaper is one of those things where you probably don't want to try and chase the Reaper because she's not going to get caught. It's a waste of your cooldowns. You're overcommitting. By trying to chase the Reaper, you are by definition overcommitting.
Okay, good to know.
But she is a melee class. She does not have any range damage dealing options. She has one range skill, which is a dagger throw, that lets her teleport immediately behind the enemy, and then she can use other skills off of the back of that. Okay. But even though that's a range skill, she still has to go into melee with that teleport to then do something. Yeah. So Reaper is one of those classes where she has lots of knockdown abilities. She has lots of decent peeling ability for her team, and you are not going to catch her. But she also has notoriously low health and defense, and because she is very much of a melee, even if she has the ability of kind of juking your attempts to peel, she does have to commit when she's going in. So you can try and peel her off or try and read her engages and her approaches, and that means that you can blow her up very easily. As much as she's like a melee class, she feels almost her presence in the game is not strong in the sense that she has literally no map control whatsoever. She's always moving around. So that's kind of her weakness, right? You can really much pressure her team, and when she goes into peel, she's kind of trying to go into that melee range, or at best throw the dagger, but even then she's going to have to teleport at some point.
Yeah, so she's going to have to go in to try and catch it.
Very, very pesky, very annoying class. Be wary of when she goes into stealth because she gets a massive damage boost out of stealth.
Okay.
But she doesn't get that very often. Don't chase, punish her engages. Is what I would say.
Amazing. So, I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed that because that's a ton of really useful information there through all the classes. I kind of said like what they kind of feel like to play, what they're like in the arena, and for me, like personally as well, like really importantly, like how to like counter them and some really good tips and stuff there. So I hope you guys all enjoyed that. I did have another kind of two more questions. Do you want to? Sure. Do you want to? You good to go? Good to go still?
Yeah.
So the next one is quite a short one, really. So obviously, we're not getting all the classes at launch.
That's right.
So any idea on how quickly we might get them or when they might be released? Just spitballing here, like how often we might get like a class released to us. Any thoughts on that?
It's a little bit complicated. So Russia didn't get her first additional class until almost 6 months after release.
Right.
So when Lancemaster / Glaiver came out, it was I think in March or something. So it took a very long time for the first new class to get added.
Okay.
And they've had inconsistent periods of, okay, now we're adding new classes very frequently. Usually their schedule would have been every 3 months to add a new class, but then they'd had periods where they had very extended breaks. If I'm going to go by the schedule that we've had this year and the way that Russia has been releasing their classes, such as Reaper, Scouter, Gunslinger, Striker, 3 months has been the average. They release a class, 3 months later, new class, 3 months later, new class.
Okay.
But the stretch of time between Striker and Gunslinger, so Striker is going to be coming out this month on the 15th in Russia, and that was actually under 2 months. It's about like 7 weeks essentially between Gunslinger and Striker release.
Right.
So it may be that in Russia we'll be seeing another 2 months until Sorceress comes out. Who knows? And considering that NAU might be quite a bit far behind in classes, I feel it may be that we see a 3 or 2 month schedule when it comes to releasing new classes. If they don't throw a curveball and they release like multiple classes at once, who knows?
Yeah. Who knows?
But it's hard to say because it's going to depend a lot on how long it takes for them to add that first new class in and what schedule they're going to be following after that.
Yeah, that's fair. So it's just kind of wait and see. But it's interesting to just kind of hear some history of like that, because there might be people here that are like, man, I really want to play like Reaper or something, and they're waiting. So it's good to hear a little bit about that. Okay, so the last question, a kind of bonus question that I picked up and thought about like just before we actually sat down and did this was, so there are classes. Are there classes? Because you've I believe you've looked at like the top 50s or so like that, like from like Korea, from Russia or anything like that. Are there any classes there that might be a bit more common, or is it like it just varies like season on season where people change or what they're playing, or is there like a lot of scouters, for example, or a lot of
Yeah,
this?
well, yeah, it depends. It depends on the region, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where in Korea, yeah, you have like I think what 16 scouters in top 100. You have
Mm-hmm.
like 12 gunslingers. You have 9 lancemasters. So some classes you see far more representation in the higher echelon than other classes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you know Holy Knight in I think the top 100 you have like one.
Right.
But that's the thing to say. That's one of the things to flag where the top 100 then doesn't become indicative of a class's strength. In
Yes.
Korea, you have about 6 infighters, I think, in top 100.
Mm-hmm.
Infighter is actually considered to be a relatively weak class at the moment, so
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult to gauge how exactly that top 100, that top leaderboard is going to be like, because you have classes that are very strong, like Bard and Holy Knights, who don't see that much representation because they're support. It's harder for you to carry a game with those classes, even if in a game of everybody being a high level player, they become more dominant. Whereas a more independent class like Lancemaster, Glaiver, can be a lot more dominant in a solo queue scenario, in a solo queue setting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult because we will definitely see some classes rise to the top
Mm-hmm.
over others in a solo queue scenario.
Yes.
But for NAEU, that's going to be very, very difficult to predict
Yeah.
because in Korea, you still have lots of rank disparity. You still have diamonds getting matched with like silvers.
Right.
So classes that are going to be higher up are classes that can solo carry very well.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily have to be a strong class, but it has to be a class that can be very independent and can turn the tide of a game.
Yeah.
So that's why you see an underrepresentation of supports, for example, in the highest level, despite them probably being some of the strongest classes in the game.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, in Russia, you see a very different balance of classes as well. In Russia, you see a lot more destroyers than you do in Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see a lot less scouters. And that's also just because of class preference. You don't have that many destroyer players in Korea, and you don't have that many scouter players in Russia. People acknowledge in Russia that scouter is a very strong class, but there just aren't that many people playing the class because it didn't appeal to players.
That's
So
fair.
that's something that has to be kept in mind as well.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
in the NA and EU meta, it'll be very difficult because I think Artillerist, for example, is probably going to be incredibly dominant.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, it's a class that destroys new players. If you
Yeah.
don't know how to deal with the class, it's a gimmick. Once you know the gimmick, you can beat it. But
Okay.
until you learn how to deal with that gimmick, that class is going to be very, very difficult to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So these classes that may not necessarily be, like top tier, super strong, guaranteed tournament comp picks. You might see lots of Zerkers. You might see lots of artillerists
Mm-hmm.
in the top 100, simply because the classes that new players may struggle to fight against.
Yeah.
And since the majority of the player base is going to be new,
Mm-hmm.
that's what they're going to have to be dealing with. On the other hand, it just may be that the top players are all going to be veterans from other servers, and we're going to see metas and top 100 class lists that are very similar to Russia or Korea.
Yeah.
So and even then, NA and EU is going to be a lot more populated PvP-wise, at the very least during launch and during the early period.
Yes.
So matchmaking is probably going to be a lot more balanced. It's
Okay.
very likely you're going to be getting 6 diamonds in a team instead of 1 diamond, 2 bronzes versus 3 golds.
Yeah.
And that's going to skew the balance a lot, because everything that we think we know about solo queue balance doesn't really factor in everybody is at the same level of skill. And if we start getting that in NAU, I think the top 100 classes and the meta that we see is going to get shaken up quite a bit for solo queue.
There we go then. Amazing. Well, Lin-0, thank you so much. Is there any final thoughts or anything that you wanna wrap up on, or if there isn't, we've gone through loads, so
No, just I guess more of a disclaimer, right? Which is just to say, particularly regarding the class thing, the class overviews that I've given
Yep.
for PvP. They are just kind of my personal experience, my opinions of the classes. There's so much stuff that I have not talked about the classes that you will learn from experience. And there may be classes that I rambled on for far longer than others because either I have a stronger opinion on them or I just have a lot more experience with them.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's one of those things where it's not, I'm not saying, oh, this class is super strong and this class is super weak, or, you should play this class or you shouldn't play this class. Just kind of me rambling off the top of my head. The first thing that kind of comes to mind is like, if I close my eyes and I think Battle Master, is like, oh, okay, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where just don't take my word. Talk to other players, go on the Discords, ask, go on streams with other top players, ask them about the classes that you want to play and see what their take is. These people that have gotten to these high ranks with these classes. Go and do your research and just play the classes. Honestly, Russia is so accessible, it's so easy to get to. Even if you don't want to pay for VPN, just use, I don't know, AVG, or I don't know, get a trial and use that. Just try the classes out and see how they play, because the things that I say here are very much biased from my point of view. Might not be speaking in such a way that is conducive to newer players, or I may be speaking in such a way that takes a specific perspective of the matchups that I have to fight. Maybe the way a destroyer would deal with a demonic is very different from the way that I would have outlined, because they just have different tools in their kit. So it's one of those things where you just have to try yourself and just go ask other people, go figure things out. I'm just one person, and I just give an opinion. I give no facts.
No, but it's great. It's just great for, and I said, especially for new players. I mean, and advanced players alike that might not have thought about this point or that point that you've said. And it's just good to talk about it and discuss it from, I mean, like, I love PvP. I can't wait to get into this more and more. And hopefully that it's been quite helpful, and just people get a bit of an overview, even if they're just still considering what class they want to play or anything like that, and they can hear a few things and be like, okay, so it's kind of like this and it's kind of like that, might give them a better edge of which one they want to spend their time with. So I think that's amazing. So thank you very much, Lin-0. This has been absolutely amazing. It's really long, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to put this into 2 parts.
The class thing definitely took a very long time, so yeah.
Nah, but that's cool. So what I might do is the first section, and then the class section is like its own video, something like that, so we can go through it. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Remember, guys, to all the links and everything, because Lin-0 streams and got his YouTube channel. I stream this, obviously, my channel here as well. So remember to go down, check out the channel, check everything. Amazing builds, top quality guy, amazing at PvP. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight and getting all that amazing information all in one place, which is brilliant. So thank you so much.
No, likewise. Thank you for having me here. It's been an honor.
You're welcome. Maybe we'll get to talk again at some point, and I'll definitely be swinging by some streams and saying hey. So
yeah, that'd be very much appreciated. Thanks. Amazing.
You're welcome. All right, thank you very much. All right.
Take care, man. I'll catch you later.